step into the dark reimagining of Arthurian legend in the first person open world RPG. Explore a world stuck in everlasting autumn. Witness falling legends and make meaningful choices woven in a complex branching storyline. Alright, that was a summary for the game. Now we're going to start the video. It's been a while since I played an open world game. I don't believe I have played a ton of open world games, mainly because a lot of the bigger ones that people love are on Nintendo. I'm truthfully talking about the Legend of Zelda games, and truthfully that is it. Even looking at a game list, it seems I have played a few of these games. I've played 11 of the 25 games, and I am happy with The Witcher 3 being number one. But very few games I have played have had the innovation I have played today. Of course, besides FF14, which I kind of neglect at this point for this amazing channel. I wish I was lying, but it takes a ton of time to do all this. But I plan to play it soon, and hopefully I keep to that. I also wish that most games didn't count crafting materials as inventory space. If you don't play RPGs, role-playing games, for those not in the know, or any games or inventories, then you probably don't know about the stress of balancing your inventory space. Also, in most of these games, you have a stash to drop all of the things you want to keep, but have no space for. Most of the time, I would put any of the gear I wouldn't be able to wear because of class restrictions into my stash. Most games don't really allow you to take your stash to another character, so keeping the gear doesn't really make much sense. Selling them makes the most sense, but I just can't sell good gear that I would like to wear but can't. But I'm not going to get on games and their inventory, because that can be a video in itself. So Tainted Grail was a breath of fresh air since I was able to play a semi-recent game instead of games that were in my backlog. Most of the games in my backlog are pretty dated at this point and all have their own problems. But Tainted Grail was that new thing that kind of excited me because it was being compared to Skyrim. Now the only thing that is comparable is the open world in that there are a ton of missable quests if you don't know where to look. The game is still new, so there are a ton of bugs that can stop progression. I can only remember about 3 bug quests, which 2 were quest based, and the other one had to deal with the end game, which I'll explain without spoiling. So the 2 quests both had problems with turning in. One had a problem if you did things in order, which doesn't make sense, but eh. The other one was just a bug bounty that I couldn't really solve, so it just always showed up in my quest log. The end game one was a different problem, so when you beat the game, you were put back to the point of no return. I decided to run through the end again to get the true ending. It was easy to do all the things necessary for that. The bad thing is that you have to take a portal to get to the point of no return, but the portal didn't appear. There was no fix for it, and the only thing that worked for me was to reload the save before I beat the game. That was kind of the only way to fix these bugs, which was to reload to a previous save file. The only one I couldn't fix was a bounty one. I believe that is because I already submitted the bounty, but didn't pick up the quest. That was truthfully all the problems with the game that I dealt with, so let's talk about classes. So I wouldn't go into this game thinking there are classes and a progression system based around classes. You have 4 base builds to try out in the beginning of the game based around certain questions given to you. The questions just build your character around what you want to play around with, but it doesn't really solidify anything. The 4 are Warrior, Mage, Ranger, and Rogue. But remember, I'm just giving these names since they are closer to the playstyle. There's also a 5th option, but that option is used more of a creative path since you have full control of building your characters. But I went Ranger because I wanted to play with a bow. My dream was stunted once I got my first spell. Listen, I love magic, but there is another reason I stopped caring about the bow. The main reason is because you have to craft your arrows, and it is kind of expensive to craft it. Now, buying arrows isn't expensive, but buying the book to craft it was pretty expensive for a beginning adventurer. Yes, you have to buy books in order to learn how to craft things, which I feel isn't an amazing thing. Main reason is that everything in this game revolves around the currency in the game. You have to buy spells, which are immensely expensive. Also, anything for housing if you buy a house. I don't think I remotely was over 8k in the game, which isn't rare for me to be a rich late game, but sadly that wasn't the case. The main reason I was broke in the game dealt with spells. So like I said earlier, I went into the game planning to be a ranger, but I changed truthfully a few minutes into playing the game. I found my first spell and never looked back. But I blame that on the game not giving me a bow immediately. Also, the fact that you have to craft arrows made it hard to want to continue it. But it was kind of easy to collect arrows as the game continued. I kind of wish you were able to retrieve arrows for enemies' bodies. Well, you can, but they're broken when you get them back. But I had to buy my spells, since you couldn't just learn them as the game progressed. Also, some of these spells could be dropped from enemies, so you didn't have to buy all of them. For the most part, I haven't bought most of the spells, mainly because they're expensive. There was only a few things magic-wise that I bought, which were the summons. I decided to become a summoner mainly because I became a mage and mages can die pretty fast. After realizing that summons can aggro, I decided to start my summoner journey. Also, you know, funny thing, I realized that like I could have been easily an archer, and I could have been an archer with like summoning as a background. I feel like you can easily become an archer or a rogue essentially, and have a summon that tanks all your shit, and it will help you out immensely. Because archers, anything melee based, you're not using skills. Like you're not using truthfully anything spell wise. So because of that, you can kind of just use them. Have them using your mana bar, you're not using your mana regardless unless you have healing spells. And you'll be fine. Like truthfully I just use mana for summons and healing spells and call it a day if you're an archer or whatever. That's truthfully it. It's a lot easier to be a necromancer than a summoner because one of the first summons I was able to get was a skeleton. I did see that there was wolf summons I missed out on, but that sounds about right for me. I feel like in your first playthrough, you'll miss a ton of things. But when it came to this playthrough, I missed out on using a ton of weapons and armor sets. The main reason is because a lot of things are based around your stats. I forgot to state this, but I will state this now. I play this game knowing that I'll miss out on a ton of things, because I plan to play this game again off stream. All that means is that I'll be fine with not talking to everyone, explore things, but doing that made me focus on what was around me. I didn't have to worry about missing out on certain things, and force myself to explore. Anyway, let's continue talking about stat restrictions in this game, because I feel like there are a lot of restrictions. I dealt with stat restrictions with weapons and armor, but with spells as well. So I have no idea how my character is kind of situated like this right now. I don't know why, but I was like chilling. Here's the thing. I waited so long for it, so I tried to open up the game because I needed to show these stat stuff, so it showed you some stuff alongside it. And then the game decided to take 40 years to basically load back in or load shaders. And so because of that, I decided to put my food in the oven. It took so long. My food is done. So anyway, let's continue. So in this game you have 6 stats, but 3 are kind of different from what I am used to. You have strength, endurance, dexterity, spirituality, practicality, and perception. Strength, of course, being the stat that benefits from any type of melee combat, but also helps with stamina and armor weight system. Endurance is the stat you want to level when it comes to health, encumbrance, and of course stamina. Dexterity is a stat that houses something I maxed fully, which is stealth, but it includes attack speed, being stealthy, also range damage. Now we get to the uncommon 3. Spirituality is the stat that level the most, because it is what you level when you want to increase your magic. Practicality is a stat that helps you with your crafting, but can also help with a lot of other things. Perception is the last one, and also helps with crits, but also your sneak attack damage. I made a few things from the stats because I felt like it's better to experience some yourself when you play. As you can tell, my main leveling was spirituality, because it helped with my leveling, and then there's a skill tree of sorts. Now, I didn't really care for the skill tree section because as a mage it didn't really benefit me much. I'll just talk about the spirituality skill tree since I focused on it. So you have 4 things to level, which are wands and cubes, summoning, combat, and your own buffs and skills. As you can see, I leveled up 3 out of the 4 of these trees and left one out. I was a summoner so I had to level that one, but the combat skill tree wasn't given that much love. So I only focused on the first one because it enhanced your spell power, but the other levels were in addition. The other nodes help you out, but I wouldn't say anything was game breaking. During buffs were the best way to reinforce your mana, so most of these nodes were necessary if you wanted to play mage. I didn't level wands and cubes, and I didn't really want to waste an item slot on it. So this game isn't like most games where you can just put a bunch of spells into your hotbar. You have to treat spells like they are weapons, which means you are usually using a spell with a weapon. But what I did, a spell with a spell. I feel like if you were able to use spells like many other games, I would have been able to use bows and other weapons. But because you treat spells as a weapon, you have to put different spells in different item sets. Also, if you were a summoner, you had a limited amount of spells you could use based on your mana. So when you summon, you have mana reserve for your summon, which means you don't get to use that mana until your summon dies. Early on, I wasn't able to use some of my spells, because I didn't have the mana to cast it while my summons were active. I had to go into my inventory and switch them out for a lower cost magic to feel like I was doing anything. Also, there were certain bosses where the only thing I was doing was summoning, because my summons were dying within seconds. Now if you are asking why I didn't fight with my summons, well the simple answer is that I leveled a mage. I didn't level a magic knight, but a mage, which means all my other stats did nothing to help in fights. At the end of the game, I got all my other stats to 6. The remainder of my points went to spirituality. I had a weapon in the beginning, also a bow, but I had to discard them for spells and summons. I want to round out my stats. Once I stopped leveling my spirituality, I felt my damage plummet with my spells. I tried my best not to be a necromancer, which once I got my humanoid summons, I stopped using skeletons. I did miss out on a ton of things in this game, and I even missed out on being a pure spellcaster, since half my mana bar was used for summons. The great thing is that I do plan to play this game again with other builds and make different decisions, because there is a lot to be done. Now that we talked about my build, let's talk about combat in this game. So for the most part, I was kind of doing the same thing. When it came to moving around the map, I was crouched and dashing, which is why my sneak got max first. Oh, forgot to talk about this, since I kept mentioning this. But doing certain things level your passive stats up. I was a mage, so my magic stat leveled up. If I was a warrior, then getting hit would have got my armor stat leveled up as well. It was always funny seeing my medium armor stat go up as I die from one hit. But doing things will level up your stats, so you're kind of enforced to do things you want to specialize in. Feels kind of like MMO, the way you can mine and get materials to craft and cook. Also, cooking meals in this game is crucial for winning in fights, since most meals will heal you to full. I say that, but the healing is pretty slow, so unless you can take a hit or dodge at the right time, I would just take a potion. But combat for me probably seemed boring. But it was fun, and that was probably because I was a summoner. It probably looked boring to watch since I was just hiding behind my summons until I had mana to use spells. But a lot of my fights were dodging and resummoning my summons after they died so I wouldn't get aggro. Or summoning my summons because they didn't get pulled into the fight area, but sadly there are times you couldn't unsummon them. So there's a spell that you have to use to unsummon your summons, but sometimes you aren't able to unsummon them. So think of Souls boss areas, where an area is locked down as soon as the fight starts. Now this game will spawn your summons near you if you go further than them, since they tend to walk slow. Sometimes they get into the area with you, help out in the fight, but a lot of times they won't attack the enemy until you get close to them and attack them. Remember that I said I'm a mage, which means I shouldn't be within 5 feet from any enemy because I could die in one hit. But I had to sometimes, so my summons could start attacking. But I had fun with combat, since I crafted what I was doing in the game. No, I'm not talking about my armor, even though I'm positive I crafted my helm. I made the decision to fight with my summons. Even though I didn't buy the spells I wanted to in the end, because it was too expensive, I was content. I was broke by the end of the game, and I probably could have bought one alright spell, but I just kept my money and went to the end. There's a ton of things I didn't do in this game, which includes builds, love, and having a house. Yes, there's relationships in this game. You could also own a house, but I decided against it. I feel like buying a house and then buying furniture is some endgame stuff. Not something you do while streaming. The reason I feel like that is because it's hard to make a house you like in the game, and also all the furniture is expensive. Because of that, I have no idea where you will get all the money in order to afford everything you want, which is why this game is replayable in so many ways. The first reason is something I learned when I beat the game, which is that there are multiple endings. Also, the ending isn't the only thing that changes, because there are many ways to play this game. Depending on your actions with certain people, you have a slightly different ending. The main reason is because your actions affect this world. Every single action will change what happens in the end. You will learn what happens because of it. Also, there are so many things you can miss if you don't look at everything. The only reason I beat the game twice was because I wanted to know if I was doing the ending I wanted to do. So I looked up to make sure I was doing everything right. But then I saw there was a true ending. I love doing true endings, and I already had one of the things needed for the endings, so I decided to do it. I already explained earlier that doing all of that caused me to do it again because the game was bugged. This game is definitely replayable, and I have no idea when I plan to replay it, but probably when I go into a short replayability section, because it's time to talk about the story. So the story is based in the world of Avalon. If you know anything about it, you should know that Avalon is based around the story of King Arthur. Now, unlike most other King Arthur titles, you aren't really dealing with the usual hijinks. You aren't really put in the world when the Knights of the Round Table were at their peak, but years later. You aren't really this person that is a family member of one of the knights, but just someone that can take in another soul. You get to go down memory lane with Arthur, as he gets to learn all the differences between his era and ours. It's an interesting dynamic because we see all the things that Arthur allowed to happen to make what he felt was a better Avalon. Arthur himself was a king, but at the end of the day, he was a knight that was made to solve the problems. He had his knights, but he was the main person that dealt with the problems that was seen as we played the game. Even though we were the ones that were getting everything done, that was kind of overshadowed by Arthur at the end. Kind of felt like Cyberpunk in the end, when some people just knew what was happening. I don't really know if I like this approach, because it kind of negated everything we did. Again, you can kind of say no to anyone saying that you are King Arthur, because at the end of the day, you are the one driving your own actions. But you go around the world, kill bandits, like a ton of bandits, and give them their scalps for money. You also kill a bunch of demon-like creatures in the world, most likely run away from bears, since early level, they are menaces. I put away my hunter bow, become a hunter, but magic, and without the bow. I couldn't just say mage hunter since I wasn't hunting mages. The story is interesting because there is a main story, but that isn't the best part about this game. The best part is all the side stories that you find in the side quests. I didn't find everyone and talk to them because I truthfully didn't want to do that, since there was a ton of NPCs. I do plan to do that when I play on my own time, since I will be experimenting with different things. I wish I talked to more people, since I was happy with the people I talked with. For the most part, I stuck to what I wanted to do, except during the ending, when I wanted the achievement. Other than that, I did everything that I wanted in the game. But the best way to explain this game is that war is war. sometimes you do fucked up things. You just gotta remember that there is no heroes or villains, just winners and losers. The winners dictate the ones who is the villain, even if they themselves were the villains. Overall, I liked the game. I felt like you didn't have enough money compared to how expensive everything was in the game. Things that give you the most money was the bounties or selling gear. I wouldn't sell good gear, especially if I didn't have duplicates of said item, so that option was out for me. I could have saved money by not buying the summons, but why would I do that as a summoner? I thankfully never bought armor or weapons, otherwise that would have also aided into my funds. I think the main thing I disliked had to do with lumbering. So most of the gathering options in the game were pretty easy to do, and always accessible. Fishing, all you need to do is find a body of water and just fish. Mining, you had to find an ore that looked odd, and you would get the option to mine. But lumbering didn't work like it did for most games, since you really only had a handful of places to do it. You had to find a stump that had pre-cut logs in order for you to cut these logs into wood. I would have rather you cut trees out in the world, since the stumps with the logs refresh daily in the game, so you would never have enough. I feel like this wasn't thought of much, since they didn't really give you enough logs to make sure you can complete your missions. Because I couldn't get enough materials from lumbering, I had to spend my in-game currency and buy it, which was expensive. If this is a game where you can basically do everything and ignore the main quest, I want to be a lumberjack. Don't prepare my logs for me, like I'm a child. Let me do it myself. Also, this game decided when to hold your hand by showing you quest markers, but also decided when you had to find things on your own. I'm fine with this, but I'm not fine when the character tells me quest details, I zone out, and then I'm not able to go back to get more details from them. Also, sometimes the quest summary doesn't even tell you the updated information, so you're just wondering where the hell you're supposed to go. I kept saying that this game was new a ton of times because this would happen a lot, where I would get a quest and have to run around and talk to everyone hoping they had a clue where I needed to go. Now you could say I needed to listen more, and my rebuttal would be that the quest should update once you get more information for it. Other than that, I had fun with the game because I had the freedom to make a character of my choosing. The game had its difficulty because I was getting wrecked as a mage, which should happen when you run at enemies with no armor and a low level spell. The story was interesting to me because it kind of melded King Arthur's story with ours, which I kind of felt like we didn't really have a story until we met Arthur. Like, yes, we chose what we did in the beginning of the game. That kind of set what kind of character we were. But that wasn't us. By our actions throughout the game, we kind of molded who we were by who we decided to help. Also, a lot of times we had to explain why we decided to help them, which most of the times I was told I was lying by what I said, even though I was trying to be truthful. But if you like Skyrim-like games, and also the story of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, you may like this game. I will have to tell you that the game did have troubles for me fully loading in the environment, but truthfully that would be when I opened up the game, and then afterwards it'd be fine. I didn't feel like the skill tree was that good to me. I would rather have the spells be a separate thing and not be treated as a weapon so I can actually use magic. I know that will not change, since you would have to change the whole combat system for that to be a thing. This game also has a third person mode, but when you enable it, the game will tell you that it may be clunky or buggy since it was made for accessibility reasons. I didn't really care for it, so I stayed in first person mode. To the weirdos that care to know, it took me 76.6 hours to beat the game. I'm proud to say I still missed a big chunk of the game. That just means that there's a bunch of content to get to when I play this game again as a ranger. Anyway, tell me how you feel about the game in the comments. Hope you have a great day and amazing weekend. My name is Oni the Incubus, and that is my time. Later days. Alright, love you all. I'm gonna go eat. It is fucking late. Alright, peace out. Love you. Peace. Love you. Sing kisses consensually. Alright, love you. Bye. Bye. Love you. Peace.